Hello, I'm Liz Hill. Welcome to Podsnappery, the willful determination to ignore the objectionable or inconvenient, at the same time assuming airs of superior virtue and noble resignation. We explore things I find interesting, unusual, or annoying. So let's get down to it and spill the tea. Today, I want to talk about sucking the monkey and riding the pony.
Boom, chicka, wow, wow.
No, this is not one of those shows. Don't look so disappointed. This is totally historical and
fascinating.
Yes, that too. Sailors and rum are often connected, right? Well, for good reason, and I'm not just referring to pirates.
But why is the rum gone?
From around 1655, a pint of rum was the usual ration handed to each sailor in the Royal Navy, though the amount decreased in the following years. It was served every day, half at 12 noon, and the second half at about 5 or 6 p.m. The timing itself is notable in that we get an interesting expression from it.
When its lower limb is touching the horizon. Williamson, look to your sextant.
The expression, "the sun is over the yardarm," is believed to have originated in the North Atlantic, where the sun would rise above the upper mast bars, yards, of square-rigged ships around 11 a.m. This coincided with the forenoon stand easy, when officers would go below and enjoy their first rum tot of the day. Eventually, the phrase was adopted universally as meaning it is a suitable time to have an alcoholic beverage. I believe it was later modified to the sun is always over the yardarm somewhere.
Call noon, it's your class.
Essentially, this phrase from the nautical community means it's a good time to have an adult beverage. I mean, come on, it's always 5 o'clock somewhere in the world, right?
Why is the rum always gone? Oh. That's why.
The rum ration was known as Pusser's rum. The name is a corruption of purser, the person who issued the rum each day. Sailors were given a daily tot of rum until the practice ended in 1970. Now, back in the good old days, spirits were kept in casks or barrels. The art of surreptitiously stealing the contents of said casks was called sucking the monkey, bleeding the monkey, tapping the admiral, and later on, riding the pony. Regardless of the term, it was the practice of sucking liquor from a cask through a straw. A straw, huh? Well, that's a choice. This usually involved using a gimlet, a hand tool used for drilling small holes, mainly in wood, without splitting. Using a gimlet, they would make a small hole within a keg or barrel and use a straw to suck out the contents. That's not what I like to suck through a straw. The term tapping the admiral comes from the story of what happened to Lord Admiral Nelson during the Battle of Trafalgar. Britain's most famous naval hero was struck by a fatal musket ball at the very moment of his greatest strategic triumph. Rather than bury his body at sea, a quick-thinking Irish surgeon preserved it in a cask of brandy lashed to the deck of the ship. A hurricane was on the horizon and the mast had been shot off, so there was no way to hang the sails that would get the ship and body to England quickly. Part of this tale talks of the body being placed in a cask of rum and sailors periodically sucking the monkey to imbibe the spirits within said cask. It is for that reason that Pusser's rum is sometimes referred to as Nelson's blood.
Well, a drop of Nelson's blood wouldn't do us any harm.
And a drop of Nelson's blood wouldn't do us any harm. And a drop of Nelson's blood wouldn't do us any harm. And we'll all hang on behind.
Come on and
Roll the old chariots along. We'll roll the old chariots along. We'll roll the old chariots along. And we'll all hang on behind.
In reality, that is a myth. By keeping Nelson's remains in a cask of brandy and ethanol, spirit of wine in the lingo of the day, the ship's surgeon, William Beatty, knew Nelson's body had the best chance of surviving the journey if he used the strongest proof liquor on board. However, Beatty's best impromptu efforts could only slow the decomposition of Nelson's corpse, not arrest the process entirely. The body was slowly rotting. 2 weeks into the journey, gaseous pressures burst the lid of the cask, startling one of the watchmen so much he thought Nelson had returned to life and was trying to climb out. So, getting back to sucking the monkey. The term comes from sailors who put ashore in the East and West Indies and enjoyed drinking rum through a straw from coconut shells. Because the 3 dots on the coconut shell resembled a monkey's face, this became known as sucking the monkey. The term was widely used in the 19th century by sailors and those working the London docks, who would use this technique to help themselves to what was inside those barrels. Now, there are few issues with this practice. First, it is stealing, which is bad, or so I'm told. Second, this is done in dark places, and you might not know what is in that barrel, right? I don't know about you, but I kind of like to know what I'm sucking through a straw. And lastly, you could die. Did you know that it used to be quite common for people to die from the effects of sucking the monkey?
He's dead, Jim.
Indeed. The newspapers of the latter half of the 19th century contain numerous reports of such deaths, and if the accounts of it are accurate, it wasn't a particularly pleasant way to go. The various reported cases illustrate one important aspect of the East End of London in the Victorian era and on into the 20th century for that matter, that drinking alcohol was a huge part of everyday life. As a consequence, drunkenness was a massive problem that could sometimes have fatal consequences for the unwise or overenthusiastic imbiber. Here is one such story from the Edinburgh Evening News dated Wednesday, August 18th, 1875. On Monday evening, Mr. Humphreys held an inquest at the London Hospital relative to the death of Thomas Collins, aged 29, a laborer employed in the spirit vaults of the London docks. On Friday morning, the deceased left home in good health to go to his work as usual. At 7:45 the same night, he was brought home insensible, having been found by a fellow workman lying on the pavement. He smelt dreadfully of spirits and, never becoming conscious, was removed at 2:00 the following Saturday morning to the hospital, where the doctor pronounced life extinct. The deceased's wife stated that she had heard her husband speak about sucking the monkey. She knew he used a bone for that purpose. The coroner said this was not the first case by many that had come under his notice. No doubt most of the jury knew the meaning of sucking the monkey. A mutton bone was inserted in the bung of the barrel, which enabled the men to draw up the raw spirit into their mouths. Since the deceased had contributed to his death and no one was to blame but himself, Dr. Hughes having stated death to be due to congestion of the brain consequent on drinking strong spirits, a verdict to that effect was recorded. Today, we might call this alcohol poisoning. Drink responsibly, friends. There are many similar reports. Here is one more to further illustrate my point.
Although prosecutions for and deaths from the practice declined dramatically in the 1890s, it appears to have enjoyed a resurgence in the early 20th century, particularly in the aftermath of the First World War, by which time it had also become known as riding the pony, on account of the fact that it was common for those doing it to straddle the barrel whilst imbibing the contents. Fatalities, however, still occurred, as is evidenced by the following story from the Dundee Evening Telegraph of Monday the 12th of May, 1919. Sucking the monkey. Dock labourer's death from overproof brandy. When an inquest was held at the London Hospital on Joseph Hyams, 31 years, a dock labourer of Christian Street, St George's in the East, it was stated that the deceased was found in an unconscious condition by the side of a cask of brandy in one of the sheds at the London docks, and he died within 2 hours after a removal to the hospital from asphyxiation while in a state of acute alcoholism. Police Constable Perry said it was found that 3 casks of brandy, each containing 60 gallons of overproof spirit, had been tampered with, and each cask was deficient to the extent of 1 pint. The method by which the brandy was obtained was by making a hole through the bung by the use of a sharp instrument, and then inserting a thick piece of brown paper twisted after the manner of a pipe lighter, or by glass or metal tubing. The deputy coroner asked, Is that what is called sucking the monkey? The witness replied, yes, or riding the pony, which means that a man, having made the necessary insertion through the bung, gets astride the cask as though riding a pony and then sucks up the spirit. The coroner said that 1 pint of overproof spirit would be sufficient to kill a man, and the deceased, having apparently obtained this, had been asphyxiated. Death by misadventure was the verdict. By the 1930s, sucking the monkey had become very much a thing of the past, and the only references to it in the newspapers tended to be from retired dock workers reminiscing about their working days. Nowadays, the term is rarely used and only tends to crop up, if it crops up at all, in histories of the Victorian docks, in which it was an oft-used and well-known term. The most common reaction of people on hearing it today is to snigger, as it instantly conjures up vulgar connotations that are far removed from its actual meaning.
Vulgar connotations of its actual meaning, huh? Well, yeah, I get that, and so do you. We seem to have a hard time understanding terms and their definitions, especially archaic 19th century terms taken out of context. Well, that would be like trying to comprehend glow up in 200 years.
What?
So, the willful determination to ignore the objectionable or inconvenient, at the same time assuming airs of superior virtue and noble resignation. That, my friends, is Podsnappery. Thanks for watching. I'm Liz Hill. Remember, always take life with a grain of salt, plus a slice of lemon and a shot of tequila.